Today I will be analyzing Black Mirror Season 2 Episode 2, White Bear. I'll focus on how the visual language in this scene highlights the isolation and powerlessness of individuals facing public opinion. The use of camera and lights exposes the violent nature of public judgment in modern society. From a postmodern view, it shows individuals losing their identity and turning into visual commodities under collective judgment. Close-ups is used to focus on the character's facial expressions. This helps capture the Victoria's reactions throughout the trial. For example, when the door of the dark room opens and she finds herself on stage, her face shows shock and confusion. Later, she cries while watching a video of her crime, clearly ashamed and full of regret. During her tour in the cage, she gets upset, tries to shut out the abuse and judgment from the audience by closing her eyes tightly. The director uses these shots to show how powerless she is. Even though she knows she did something wrong, she still can't escape current situation. Close-up aren't just used for Victoria, they're used for the audience and other actors too. After the door opens, we see a close-up of the audience and everyone is clapping with smiles on their faces. Their happiness comes from a just trial, and the director shows their so-called just trial through close-ups of the audience, which is to obtain an emotional satisfaction with the pain of the Victoria. Jem smiled at the character at the end of the show. She is in sharp contrast to those who helped the Victoria before, and the author describes her in a higher position, where she manipulates the fate of the character and influences the emotional response of the audience. Another type often used is the wide shot, in the scene where the main character is trapped in a transparent glass cage. The main character is extremely small, while the angry audience outside the cage, they verbally attack the Victoria, they throw tomatoes, they take a video on their cell phones. The audience surrounded her. Visual element shows her smallness and helplessness under the public opinion. It also shows the state of the individual losing herself in the collective trial and becoming the object of emotional catharsis. Her pain and struggle are not only physical, but also emotional. No one really cared who she was or what she did. She became an object designed for people to vent their emotions. The series uses frequently cuts to show the character's sense of isolation with the collective power of the audience. The main character uses an pan-up in many scenes, making her look small and helpless. The pain of the audience looking down on the Victoria symbolizes the enormous power of collective emotion in emotional manipulation. In the book Discipline and Punishment, it says gaze is not only a kind of seeing, but also a form of power. The individual is watched while the viewer is hidden in the shadows. The use of light creates this power gaze. In the theater, Victoria is stuck in a chair in the middle of the stage for the trial, and it can be noticed that the entire environment is in darkness, but there is a spotlight from the top shining on her body. When the main character is trapped in the glass cage, it can be noticed that each frame of the cage has been installed with light strips, which makes the interior of the cage bright, while the audience on the road is in darkness. The bright light can clearly point out the position of Victoria. At the same time, you can see the change of each mood of hers more clearly. The audience is hidden in the dark, representing their dominant position in the power structure. The exposure by spotlight not only shows her helplessness, but also shows that she is forced to accept society's emotional manipulation of her. This power is one way, so Victoria has to force to repeat this painful experience again and again in the crowd, while the audience gets emotional satisfaction from watching. In the crowd, a study of the popular mind, the author argues that when people become part of a group, they lose their sense of individuality, making them more likely to be emotionally manipulated and commit terrible acts. In White Bear, Victoria is put on trial for not stopping her boyfriend from harming a little girl. We see that she is forced to relive this painful experience because of how the performers and the audience behave. Their words and actions are a form of psychological violence. Violence is happening, but instead of stopping it, the audience becomes part of it. Postmodernism support reality is not fixed. Just as the Victoria's suffering becomes a commodity, her pain is no longer real pain, but a performance rehearsed daily on stage.